Okay, this is Unit 4, Day 2, Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. This is Part 2 of our notes. You really need to go back and watch Part 1 if you haven't watched it yet. So, first of all, we know that parallel lines have the same slope. We talked about that on the Part 1. Parallel lines, they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, you have to make it negative, and it's the reciprocal, which means that we have to flip it over. So if this is the line I'm starting with, a line that's parallel is going to have a slope that's the same as this one. This is in y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, so I want lines that have a slope of 3 are going to be parallel, and it asks me to circle those. And then for ones that are perpendicular, I need to take the 3, it's positive, so I need to make it negative, and then I need to flip it over. This is a whole number, but 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. So I make it 3 over 1, and then I flip this over, so it's 1 over 3. So they're going to be perpendicular if they have a slope of 1/3. Now let's look at our options here. Which ones can we tell right off are parallel? They're the ones that have slopes of 3. Well, this one has a slope of 3, because here's the slope right here. The slope is this number right here before the x. 3, I was looking for ones with a slope of 3, so that one's parallel. Which other ones have a slope of 3? Well, this one right here is in the form y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. This is point slope form and the best form of a line ever. It's so awesome. We're going to use it on this whole worksheet. But the slope is still right here, m. There's the slope of 3. So this one also has a slope of 3. So this one is also parallel. Now this one, he threw on there to be a little tricky, because this has a slope of 3, but what do you notice? It's actually the exact same line. So it's not parallel because it's the same line. This is the same line, and parallel lines are different lines that have the same slope, so that doesn't work. Alright, so that's the only ones that look like they have the same slope. Let's see, which ones have a perpendicular slope of negative 1/3? Well, this one is in y equals mx plus b form. Here's the slope right here, 1/3. So those are perpendicular. And then here's another one, negative 1/3. This is in the same form as this. So here's the slope right here. Those are the perpendicular slopes, so those are perpendicular. Now what about this over here? This one is in standard form, which is pretty much the form we dislike the most. It's really not very useful. ax plus by equals c. It doesn't tell me the slope. I can't graph it on my calculator like that. It's pretty much a pretty useless form of the line. However, it's really pretty. It's got the little x and y there really nicely. It doesn't have all these parentheses and stuff. So they like to write it like this, but it's pretty useless for our purposes. I need it in y equals form so that I can find the slope of it. So what I need to do is get this y by itself. How am I going to get the y by itself? Well, I need to get rid of this part, so I'm going to add the opposite of this one to both sides. And I'm going to get negative 3 plus 3, those cancel. Y equals 3x plus 4. Can I put those together? No, those are not like terms, so I can't put them together. They don't like each other. They have to stay just like that. Now, what is the slope in this one? Well, the slope is the 3, so 3 is the slope. That's the one that's parallel, so this one is also parallel. So the first thing you may be asked to do is find lines that are parallel or perpendicular. The next thing you're going to be asked to do, and you've got questions like this on your homework and your test, is write the equation. If I tell you, here's the line you're working with, and I want you to write one that's parallel to this. And I want the new line to go through this point. So we are going to use the point slope form of the line, which is the greatest form ever. So I'm just going to write this down here. And then the point, it's called point slope. This is the point we're going to fill in, x and y. And we're going to fill it in with the point I want it to go through. And then we're going to fill in the slope right here. So I need to find the slope to fill in. So I need to look up here to find the slope. And we did this on the warm-up part. Slope is rise over run, so this is 2 over 1. So 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2, so this one has a slope of 2. So I'm going to fill in 2 for the m. My x1 and y1, well, these points are always in x and then y. So this is my x1 and my y1. So x1 is 0. I'm going to put that in right here for this x1. And y1 is 2, so I'm going to plug it in right there. And then the rest of the equation I just copy down. Y minus 2 equals m I plugged in and x minus this. So I'm plugging in for x1 and y1, and I'm plugging in for the m. And that's it, I'm done. You don't have to simplify it. We have the answers like this on the homework, and the answers are like this on the test. All right, the next one. So I need to do the same steps. I'm going to write down my standard form. Okay, so I paused the video for a second there so I could write out my equations. They're just the same one I had over here. And then I went ahead and found the slope on each one of these. So you should pause the video and make sure you've got all this written down. Okay, so the slope here was rise -5, because it goes down, and then run 2. I also know if you watch the first video, this is a downhill line, so it's going to have a negative slope. This one, I did the same thing, rise -1, run 2, so its slope is -1/2. So then I also labeled these x1, y1 on each one of these, because that's the point I'm going to plug in. So I'm going to plug in x1 for this one, and y1 for this one, and my slope I know is the same because I'm looking at parallel lines, so the slope is going to be the same as the slope of this line, -5 over 2. The rest of it I just copied down from my original problem. Now the thing you do have to be careful of is these are minuses here. So even though this was a -2 from there, it's minus a -2. So this one, you might want to go ahead and rewrite as x plus 2, because minus a negative is a plus. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this one. My y1 is -3, so it's y minus -3. My m is -1/2 from up here. And x minus x1 is 1. So again, we probably want to rewrite this as y plus 3. There we go. Now they also want us to graph these lines that we just drew out here. So to graph these from this form, it's really easy. I just graph the point, 0, 2. That's the point they gave me. And then I graph the slope, which is 2. Rise 2, run 1. Okay, let's do it again. So I graph the point they gave me, -2, -1 right there. And then graph the slope I know. It's the same slope as this, -5, 2, which is -5, 2. And am I getting lines that are parallel out of this? Yes. And the last one, graph the point they gave me, 1, -3, 1, -3, right here. And I've got a slope of -1/2, so that's down 1 over 2. There's my line. Done. Okay, now they want us to do lines that are perpendicular. So once again, I've got y minus y1. This is the same point slope form in the line that I had up there. And we're going to plug in. I'm going to still plug in the same point. So this is going to be a line perpendicular to this one right here. It's going to be the same point as I had right there. So that's not going to change. It's still going to be 2 goes in for y1 and 0 goes in for the x. And the rest of my equation gets copied down just like it is up there. Notice this is exactly the same. What is the only difference when I'm talking about a perpendicular line? The only difference is the slope. The new slope says I take the old slope, I change it from negative to positive, so it's going to be negative, and I do the reciprocal. Well, remember that 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1. So when I flip over 2 over 1, I get 1/2. So this is the new slope I'm going to put in right there, -1/2. That's the equation. Notice it's the same as the parallel. All that changed was the slope. Okay, so we're going to write down the forms again here. pause the video so you can get them. Okay, I paused the video and I wrote down the standard form of my lines here. And then I plugged in x1 and y1 from this point right here. The same thing I did up here. Because the only thing that's going to change down here on these two is my slope. So pause and write this down if you need to. Okay, now the only thing that changes is I need to change the slope. If it's perpendicular, I change it from negative to positive, and I do the reciprocal, which means flip it over. So instead of 5 over 2, it's 2 over 5. Here, instead of 1 over 2, it's 2 over 1, but 2 over 1 is the same thing as just 2, so my slope is just 2. That's it.